record.
Hello and welcome to a new edition called Agri-News for the Ohio State University South Centers. And today we're going to highlight John Grimes, our beef specialist here at the university. So welcome, John. And John, give us a little bit of information about yourself and where you started and what you're doing now.
Sure. Been with Extension for over 31 years now. Started out as a Extension Associate in Brown County back in 1986, was there for a few years, and then jointly shared a position in Adams and Brown County as County Extension Agent in the early 90s, moved back to Brown County in the mid 90s, and then was in Highland County as the Ag Agent there for several years until I moved here at the beginning of 2011, and I've been in this position, the Ohio State University Extension Beef Coordinator position, since January of 2011.
Great. So now, what does a beef coordinator do? Give me, just.
Well, jokingly, yeah. I guess I would say I do state beef specialist work without a PhD.
Without
okay.
it, right.
Yeah.
There you go.
And paid accordingly.
Right.
So,
right.
No, just a little sarcasm there,
Mm-hmm.
but basically, I work with. We have a beef team, which mm-hmm. is several extension educators and state specialists that work on beef interests. Mm-hmm. For the longest time, extension educators have been able to devote a certain amount of their time mm-hmm. in a specialty area. So we work with those folks. We have a newsletter that we put out weekly. Stan Smith in Fairfield County is the editor mm-hmm. of that. And
mm-hmm.
So between working on the content for that and some of our statewide programs, such as our beef school, we can talk about these more in detail. We have a webinar series that mm-hmm. we have every winter that we've done for several years. The newsletter comes out every week. And any other projects along the way, we kind of coordinate that. So that would
Gotcha.
be... primarily everything I do would be with beef cattle, but because
mm-hmm.
of beef cattle, we do some forage work as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, obviously you said you hold some webinars and things like that. Mm-hmm. Do you, in those webinars, what are they covered from beginning calf to end of harvest? Or,
well, I would encourage.
Harvest,
I didn't know when we were going to work this in. I would encourage folks to go to our website. Our
mm-hmm.
beef team has a website. If you go to u.osu.edu/beef,
yep,
and we've got lots of information there. We have the newsletters published there every week. We have a library of
okay.
different publications and fact sheets from Ohio State and
mm-hmm.
other universities.
Mm-hmm.
We have a YouTube channel where we have several videos, and we're trying to grow that because
mm-hmm.
we think that probably stays a little more current than some of the print publications.
Right.
But there's a wide variety of topics there that you can go check out.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have links to other universities too. So
right.
I think there's a wealth of information there,
mm-hmm.
and so we try to keep that up to date as well as we can.
Good. Well, I know you were just out west recently.
Yes.
And seen some wildfires that went on and stuff like that. Give us a little bit about what you've seen, and I think we've got a picture or two about that
right.
as well. But go ahead and give us a little synopsis of what happened out there. I mean, it was just devastating.
I think it was, and it is.
Mm-hmm.
It'll go on for several years. Some of those folks, it'll take quite a while to recover. And it was on Monday, March the 6th is when
mm-hmm.
it hit. And
mm-hmm.
Still not sure of the total certainty of how they all started. There's rumors and innuendos, but it does appear that possibly power lines were involved, sparking from the excessive winds. But there were 4 states that were impacted by this, and this is a picture from Kansas. It's probably the county that I'm aware of that got impacted the greatest, Clark County, Kansas, which is southwestern Kansas. It's about 2 hours straight west of Wichita, about an hour southeast of Dodge City. This particular ranch, where the picture is the southern side of the ranch borders the Oklahoma Panhandle. So if you kind of look where the Oklahoma Panhandle starts, it's about geographically where we're looking at here.
Now that fire there, I think we talked before. Is that like almost a mile away?
That's a mile. If you look at the green in between the hood of the truck and the fire, that's a section of wheat, and a section's a mile square. So that's roughly a mile away. And behind that grove of trees, you can see in front of the fire were some buildings. Now, the buildings did not, the barns and the primary facilities at this particular ranch did not burn, but to the right-hand side of that fire was one of the ranch family members' home that did burn. Basically, where these fires hit, the only thing that burnt was dry prairie grass. They had a really good grass year going into this. And so there's a lot of fuel, and then you take 60, 70 mile an hour winds. This particular shot was actually in the middle of the afternoon. If you look at the top center of the screen, you can see how bright.
Yeah, it looks like a sunny day, isn't it?
Yeah, and then you look at the fire. And if you look closely, just above the fire line, you'll see 3 dots. Those are actually night lights, spotlights. It got so dark from the smoke that it triggered those. But Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Colorado were impacted by this. In this particular county, Clark County, Kansas, is about 620,000 acres. 460,000 of them burnt.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
It was, I heard about it. I know lots of people out there and heard vivid descriptions, but until you see it, it was unbelievable.
It's really hard to just look at even.
But this particular ranch is about 47,000 acres and about 41,500 acres burnt.
Wow.
And there's all kinds of stories about this. I think we have a picture the next day. The second picture we've got shows what it looks like after the fires went through. And this is kind of an ironic picture. This is a young cow that had a calf the day after the fire.
Wow, just the day after.
And then you look at the scorched earth, so to speak, and
nothing to graze on. Nothing to eat at all.
So that's what those folks were really challenged by is they lost feed, they lost animals. I know the primary vet in this community told me, I was out there about 3 weeks ago, that they estimate they lost over 4,000 cows in that fire. So that was one of the lucky ones that you just saw there. And so I guess what I would tell people is, there's lots of places that have natural disasters and all, but these folks, this is a community that is primarily ranching. You do not see industry. I don't know what the population of this county was, but when the county seat is less than 1,000 people, you're in a rural
area, aren't you?
And, so it was really shocking to see, and it was depressing for those folks because they lost feed, they lost fence, miles and miles of fence.
Now, didn't you say that the fence cost?
What I've heard is 5 strands of barb and some combination of wood and steel posts. They're estimating about $10,000 a mile.
Wow.
To build.
$10,000 a mile.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
That's unreal. That's less than $2 a foot.
Yeah. It seems cheap, but when you put
the sheer size of it,
when you're talking miles, that's something
staggering.
different.
And the thing of it is, I know there's ranches that lost everything. They lost their home, they lost their equipment, they lost their animals. And I feel for those people. So there's been some. I guess I've told you the bad side of it. The good side of it is how people have stepped up to try to help these folks. There's been lots of foundations set up to donate money to these folks. I think we have another picture that shows some of the hay donations that have come in that when they were starting out. It was there you go. It's pretty amazing to see just the volume of hay that was being brought in there. And I know since I was there, there's been a lot more. When we were there, we met caravans of trucks hauling hay in from multiple states. I know Ohio has sent quite a bit out there. I've seen stories from Missouri, Michigan, all over. And, it's kind of, I guess, renews your faith in humanity that they're not waiting on the government. They're trying to get help. Now, it would be nice if the government would help those folks. I think all of us, we think about the current political situation. We talk about taxes and tax breaks and projects the government does. This was truly a natural disaster. I don't think this would be what you call a pork belly project. You know, this would be something where they could help to the community. So what I was going to say to wrap kind of our discussion on this is that if you go to the Ohio Cattlemen's website, which is ohiocattle.org, there is a page that talks about where you can make monetary donations. There's different funds. I know Kansas Livestock Association has gotten several $100,000 donated, and then that community right there, the Ashland Community Foundation, are two of the big ones I'm aware of. But this isn't just Kansas. This is Texas, Oklahoma, and Colorado. But Kansas probably got hit the worst.
Probably the worst.
And it's really amazing there wasn't any more loss of life. In this, I think there were 7 or 8 people that perished, and there was one in this county that we just showed. But it's truly amazing when you saw it. It just that black look you saw. You come over this hill and there it is. It's like it's amazing. So, but that's a really interesting community. Those, like I said, those are lifers in terms of agriculture, and how they're just okay, we're going to get after it and fix it. It's pretty amazing, really. So I just wanted to let people know, because to be honest with you, if you're not on social media, such as Facebook or Twitter or something like that, this didn't get a lot of national coverage.
I never seen it on the news a lot.
And not to be
very hard
not to be cynical about it, but in these areas, there's just not a lot of TV viewers or votes.
You're right. You're right. Not a lot of votes.
And if this would have happened in a bigger populated state like Ohio or New York or something, California, you'd have heard about it all the time.
Constantly.
So I just, again, wanted to put that out for people to be aware what had happened to these folks in the beef industry. And it'll take a while to rebuild, but they'll do it. No question.
They're already starting. I'm sure they're already starting. So, well, obviously, those are feedlots, or some of them were, and such. But so with that, obviously, we're still producing beef and things like that. We wanted to talk a little bit about exports and how does that all play into this?
Well, it's been interesting. All of agriculture goes through cycles, you know, supply and demand. If you're an economist at all or have any basic understanding of economics, supply and demand drives everything. And agriculture, in particular beef, has gone through pretty wild swings this decade. 2014 and 2015 will probably go down as, maybe in my lifetime, the high water mark for its prices. We kind of had a perfect storm of low numbers and strong demand. So prices went up. And since the fall of 2015, we've seen some volatility in prices. So right now it's actually pretty good. It's better than most of the trade organizations thought it would be. And I think there's reasons for that. I think we're producing a better product. Farmers and ranchers have done a good job of using good genetics to produce higher quality meat, but demand has been good. I personally give credit partly to the checkoff, to do ads for the industry. But exports are a big part of it. Annually, 10 to 15% of our sales come from export markets.
Really?
So the most recent figure I've seen, that whatever a steer is worth today, roughly $300 of it comes from overseas sales. And that's very important. Just for information for the audience, our main export markets today are Japan, South Korea, Mexico, Canada, and Hong Kong. Now, if you want to use your imagination a little bit, South Korea and Hong Kong, probably some of that winds up in China.
Probably.
And there was just some news out the last 10 days about President Trump and the President of China meeting, talking about some of these trade issues. And we have been out of the China market since December of 2003. That's when the one case of mad cow came out, and they blocked our trade with them. So they're at least talking about it. I think it's going to be a little more difficult to get the actual mechanics worked out, but there's hope on the horizon. But,
at least we're talking about it. That's for sure.
Not to get too much into politics, but trade is important. We do have imports, and I know some people, we've heard about the wall at Mexico. There are some people that would like to build a wall around the country and just have exports. That's not the way it works.
No.
We have to have free trade.
Yep.
So it's important to the beef industry, and you think about where future growth would be. China's middle class, they're improving in terms of disposable income, and history has shown to us when a country gets more disposable income, they tend to eat more protein. Whether it's pork, chicken, or beef. So I'm just saying, I think that's something on the horizon that we need to be aware of. This is the beef industry is a long-term project. If you're into instant gratification, you're not going to raise beef cattle because
you're right there.
You breed a cow today, it's 283 days till it's born, and then to be ready for harvest to get into the food chain, it's typically another 15 to 20 months.
Right.
So the decisions we're doing today impacts probably what you're going to eat 2 to 3 years from now.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So,
you're planning for future constantly.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like a grocery store. You've got stuff going off the shelves, but you got to have something in the pipeline to
bring
fill
it back
up. So, and that's true for any livestock species, but it's especially true for beef because it's so long term. So you got to be thinking ahead. What are you going to want as a consumer down the road? So we have to be aware of that, and there's a lot of industry groups that do that for us, as far as consumer focus groups and things like that. I mean, you go out and obviously our society today, more of us eat out than we used to.
Right. Yeah.
But the thing, if you go to the grocery store and look at the meat case, you think back when we were younger and had less gray hair and more hair.
Yeah, you're right there.
Beef was kind of generic. I mean, you'd see it on a styrofoam tray wrapped in cellophane and price slapped.
Right. Yeah. No branding of any sort.
But branding has really changed in the last 10 years. I mean, I'm very familiar with the Certified Angus Beef program. It's the first brand. If you go to the Federal Registry, that is the first branded beef program that was labeled by Angus. The USDA, and it's grown to the point that in fiscal 2016, they sold over 1 billion pounds.
Wow, 1 billion pounds.
Now that's a small part of the total consumption in this country, but for a branded program to go from zero, that's been 40 years. It'll be 40 years next year. It actually, and we're proud of it because actually, Certified Angus Beef had a lot of it starts with Ohio State. Yeah. Dr. Bobby Van Stavern, he was one of the college professors when I was in school. He was integral in setting up the standards, the grading standards to qualify for it. And so we're pretty proud of that fact, and the headquarters for CAB's in Worcester.
Yep.
So it has strong ties to Ohio, but to say that, beef is higher priced than some of our competitors, so will they pay for a better product? Well, research is showing they will. I said we sold 1 billion pounds last year. Sales this year for the first half of fiscal 17 are up 13%.
That's great.
I guess what I'm saying is I want to think as a consumer I don't have too many vices, but I sure will indulge in a good meal, And I think
you're right. Yeah.
I think folks and
most people do. They tend to celebrate on things.
Exactly. But even I don't want to say like I'm a food snob, but something that's changed over the last few years with beef is you'll see more upscale hamburger places. It's not just McDonald's, Burger King.
It's not them little fast food places that we see on a regular basis.
Five Guys, Quaker Steak and Lube, Smash Burgers, places like that. And so obviously
that really all they do is specialize in burgers.
A little better,
higher grade.
So that all helps producers get more value.
Yep.
There are premiums for the higher quality grade cattle. If you go to the grocery store and you look on the shelf or the meat case, there's basically 3 grades that you'll see. You'll see prime, which is the highest, and the grade is determined by the amount of marbling or flecks of fat inside of the steak.
Yep.
And then you have choice, and then you have select. Select would be the leanest. It's generally less juicy because it doesn't have the marbling in there. And so what we've seen in the marketplace is a growing demand for choice or better and less demand for the select, for the lower marbling. So I don't know where this is going to go, but at least as long as the economy is supportive, I think you're still going to see a trend for the consumer wanting a better product.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the case, and hopefully, I think this follows the job market as well. As long as people get good jobs and they're staying employed, where all of a sudden a few years ago the economy was down and we didn't see that, but now it seems to be coming back and things are moving along.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not going to get into political preferences, but there's a lot of important discussions going on in Washington. Just this week, we're talking about taxes.
Right. Yeah.
Tax
I was going to
cuts.
ask about taxes.
So, how much is that going to come back into the consumer's disposable income? And it's not just food; it's vacations, it's buildings, houses, things like that. So, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's whether you were for or against our president. There's some things trying to happen, and so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, and we'll see. I think farmers are keeping an eager eye on Washington to see what their philosophy is on regulations. I mean, we talk about the EPA, USDA, and how their policies impact agriculture. There's a lot of anxious people watching what goes on in Washington, D.C.
Right.
Estate tax, that's a big one. When you talk about passing a farm on to the next generation, and we know that's not a big segment of the population because only 1% of the people are involved in production agriculture. But when you talk about whether my daughters could carry on my farm, and if they're going to lose so much of it to estate tax, and they may want to farm, but then they financially can't, that's pretty serious. And so we'll see how that all shakes out. But it's going to be an interesting time. But as far as I know, we're winding down on time. Probably the thing right now, we're in the spring. Most of the calving is done. Farmers are in the breeding season, either turning bulls out or using artificial insemination. Probably the biggest thing that can impact the beef herd in the next few weeks is the hay crop.
Yeah.
Can we get the hay made in good quality? Because you don't want to think about winter after we've come out of winter, but what we do in the next month to 6 weeks will greatly impact our jobs next winter as far as feeding the cow herd and what we do nutritionally for them and the impacts on production. So I would encourage you, Mother Nature is pretty good about telling us when we need to harvest hay. It either shoots ahead or shoots a bloom. Like alfalfa or clover will have their distinctive purple or pinkish flower. Grass will have a seed head. Every day a grass or forage plant is in head or bloom, the quality's going down. It's mature. So I guess I would encourage farmers to do as good a job as they can harvesting the forage. Obviously, Mother Nature has a big impact. Depends on windows for dry weather and how that impacts. But and again, I'd refer to the website, u.osu.edu. We have a lot of stuff on /beef. I'm sorry, u.osu.edu/beef. We have things on storing hay, preserving hay, in the library and on the YouTube page. So I would encourage people to check that out. Again, best laid intentions, Mother Nature can mess those up. So that would be a key thing. It's exciting time because farmers are come through winter. They've been feeding hay. Now they're going out on grass. That doesn't mean we can't keep an eye on them because the grass right now. Think about your yard. How often you mow your yard this time of year?
Right now it's coming on pretty hard.
The grass is pretty full. Grass is pretty full of water, and so the beef cow may be eating a lot of grass, but they may not be getting the dry matter they need. So watch your cows, make sure they're not getting thin. You may have to do some supplemental feed to make sure they stay where they're at. So that's some of the key things.
Great. Well, maybe we'll talk about that on the next program or next show about more grazing and hay and when we should. Absolutely. What we should be doing to be looking out for the next our next step in the beef production world, I guess. So
be glad to.
Yeah. Well, we're going to end this segment for now. We'll join you back next month on Agri-News. So for now, I'm Dwayne, and this is John, and we'll see you next month.